sick from the virus, as well as children with underlying health conditions.
They can easily bring the virus home to other people that are vulnerable and make them sick as well.
This vaccine can change that and keep children safe.
It's essential that your children get vaccinated to protect them, to protect your families, and to protect those in the community around you.
I'm feeling good.
Let's savor these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Let's relish these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the festivals going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I don't like getting sick. The virus will die. It will be easy to not catch it. Keep my family safe and keep playing soccer. Because I love being vaccinated.
What's your hope for everyone?
I hope everybody gets the vaccine to keep safe and strong. Be like happy, having fun everywhere. Everyone stay safe and hope you get the vaccine.
Let's whoop it up for these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the cheering going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. In the face of COVID-19, staying healthy is important. And now the same is true as we face the flu. Influenza has the potential to infect millions, putting lives and the healthcare system at risk. Fortunately, it's easy to protect yourself. The flu vaccine is safe and effective, and with COVID-19 still spreading, it's essential. To see how you can hit this virus head-on, visit michigan.gov/flu. Now that the vaccine is available for children 5 and up, why do you recommend it?
Kids are part of the community and they can spread COVID.
We're seeing both healthy children getting sick from the virus, as well as children with underlying health conditions.
They can easily bring the virus home to other people that are vulnerable and make them sick as well.
This vaccine can change that and keep children safe.
It's essential that your children get vaccinated to protect them, to protect your families, and to protect those in the community around you.
I'm feeling good.
Let's savor these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Let's relish these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the festivals going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I don't like getting sick. The virus will die. It will be easy to not catch it. Keep my family safe and keep playing soccer. Because I love being vaccinated.
What's your hope for everyone?
I hope everybody gets the vaccine to keep safe and strong. Be like happy, having fun everywhere. Everyone stay safe and hope you get the vaccine.
You're listening to 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake and 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills, your radio homes for the Megacast. Today's edition of the Megacast begins now. Welcome to the Megacast, our live local daily TV, radio, and streaming show looking into all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Today we'll be talking to a number of people about topics of interest and importance to Michiganders just like you. Let's begin with what's making headlines today on our website at civiccentertv.com. On our local news page, our first article comes from the Detroit News' Sarah Rahal, as Michigan added just over 12,000 COVID-19 cases and 158 deaths to its pandemic totals over the past week. That according to reports from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services as of Tuesday. That brings the past week's average to about 1,738 cases per day, a decrease of 2% from the previous week reported. Deaths were also down slightly over the past week, marking about 15 in total fewer than the week prior's numbers. As of Monday, just 6% of the state's hospital beds were occupied with COVID-19 patients. That is 1/4 of the total from January of this year, where numbers peaked at 24% of hospital beds filled. Also making headlines today on civiccentertv.com's local news page, from Paul Egan at the Detroit Free Press. Last night marked the final official gubernatorial debate taking place at Oakland University and hosted locally by Channel 7 Action News, WXYZ TV in Detroit, as well as partners with other news stations in Grand Rapids, as well as Lansing, between Governor Gretchen Whitmer and GOP challenger Tudor Dixon. Strategies were a bit different this go-around than the first debate in Grand Rapids, where Aaron Call, the director of debate at the University of Michigan, was quoted in this article referring to the incumbent Democrat governor's strategy as being, quote, prevent defense, end closed quote. This time around, the governor played more hardball, referring to Dixon as a, quote, election denier, end closed quote, and saying that in terms of COVID-19 prevention strategies employed by the governor during the pandemic, that if the state were hypothetically under a Tudor Dixon administration during that time, quote, thousands more people would have died, end closed quote. In terms of Tudor Dixon's performance, the Free Press's Egan marked that the GOP challenger continued to misstate facts on Whitmer's policy objectives, as well as the abortion rights ballot initiative, which is proposal 3 on this year's election ballot. In addition, Dixon took a defensive approach to some of the governor's jabs this time around, referring in particular to her remarks on what would happen in a hypothetical Tudor Dixon administration at the peak of the pandemic, referring to her strategy, particularly on the vaccine, which she found offensive, saying that it was ridiculous for Governor Whitmer to associate her with being anti-vax because she openly stated that she received the first COVID-19 vaccine. There's plenty more to unpack from that final gubernatorial debate that occurred on Tuesday night. There's also opportunities for you to watch that back and replays provided by our local news outlets. Check on the Free Press as well as the Detroit News' website by clicking through some of our articles and reading their updates on last night's gubernatorial debate. Now, stay tuned right here on the Megacast. Later on in our program today, we'll speak with Dave Giulio from Oakland University's Center for Civic Engagement, where he also serves at Oakland as a professor of political science. And we'll recap last night's debate that happened at the Center for Civic Engagement on the campus of Oakland University. Finally, making headlines today on civiccentertv.com's local news page, this time from Mike Wilkinson at Bridge, Michigan. Michigan is once again poised to set a new record for absentee voting during this election cycle, with local clerks this week stating that they received, just over the past 7 days, about 340,000 ballots. One big surprise in those metrics of late so far with absentee ballot returns, a large swath of those ballots are among rural Republican voters, indicating that GOP-affiliated or Republican-leaning voters seem to be warming up to the idea of voting by absentee ballot. Typically, when we think of absentee voting or we think of voting by mail, we think of Democratic voters who have typically in the past 2 elections here in Michigan, where no reason absentee voting has been legal after a positively voted ballot initiative in 2018 granted that right to all Michiganders and Michigan registered voters. Mostly has leaned to be a more democratic practice, with Republicans particularly, especially in the wake of the 2020 presidential election, marking that there are a lot of problems they have with absentee voting. Not the case based on these returns so far, with a majority of those being from predominantly Republican counties. Now, that doesn't mean that those are Republican voters. It doesn't mean that the GOP voting base is necessarily being more aggressive in their absentee voting or is more boisterous about that. For all you know, that those counties could have flipped. More than likely, they have not. And that is a big jump and a big vote of confidence for Republicans going into this election cycle, if that's the case. Among the 21 counties where absentee voting has doubled in its total since its no reason inception in 2018 by ballot initiative, only 4 of those 21 counties backed President Biden in the 2020 presidential election. The remaining 17 all going for former President Donald Trump, and its majority. On the Democratic side of things, potentially a cause for concern so far with these metrics on absentee ballot returns is the smaller growth of absentee voting in the city of Detroit, which has predominantly, almost in entirety, been a Democratic county. Now, of course, Detroit not counted as part of Wayne County. It is separate from Wayne County in elections, as well as health department metrics, as we've had in other stories in the past. About 90% Democrat in recent elections in those areas and in that particular area of the state. And there's been a slight increase in absentee voting with about 35,000 ballots received so far. In comparison, that's up about 12,000 ballots from 2018, but not quite the aggressive increase in those metrics that we've seen in many other counties, including those 21 counties that we mentioned earlier on, that have doubled their numbers since 2018 up until this point. More information on that and a really interesting article from Mike Wilkinson from Bridge, Michigan, that also includes a lot of supporting materials on this matter and a lot more metrics to get a look at where absentee voting is in this election. Certainly played a huge role in 2020. We would expect it to play a big role also in 2022, as we're down to the wire, just 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks now away from Election Day, as last night, the final gubernatorial debate night, was officially 2 weeks from election night. So plenty of more information to come in on the election front, and certainly absentee ballot voting going to have a huge impact on the results of our gubernatorial election and, of course, those ever important elections down ballot in your local area. All of those headlines and all that supporting information I just mentioned can be found on these articles at civiccentertv.com on our local news page, as well as helpful links on COVID-19 information, so you can read more about the MDHHS's recent numbers from this week. At the top of our page, links to the CDC, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and the Oakland County Health Division's COVID-19 specific web pages, so you can stay up to date on everything you need to know on the COVID-19 front, and of course on other news making headlines in your local area and all across the state of Michigan by clicking through on those articles. And while you're there, if you have the means to do so, we highly encourage you to subscribe to those publications and support journalism in your local area. We have a great show ahead on this Wednesday edition of the Megacast. Coming up next, we'll talk to the music director of the Warren Symphony. Gina Provenzano joins us next on the Megacast.
Let's relish these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the festivals going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I don't like getting sick. The virus will die. It will be easy to not catch it. Keep my family safe and keep playing soccer because I love being vaccinated.
What's your hope for everyone?
I hope everybody gets the vaccine to keep safe and strong. Be happy, having fun everywhere. Everyone stay safe and hope you get the vaccine.
Let's whoop it up for these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the cheering going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
This November, honor the many people who offer their lives for our freedom at the 2022 Heroes Appreciation Breakfast. Organizations, charities, and local residents are invited to celebrate the men and women that ensure our safety and security. Hear from guest speakers, live performances, and presentations from veterans, officers, and more. Save the date, November 8th, 9 to 10:30 a.m. at the new West Bloomfield Middle School. Call 248-451-1900 to register.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live local daily TV, radio, and streaming show looking into all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more about our program on our website, civiccentertv.com/Megacast, where you'll find more information on all of our partnering stations from the Oakland County area where we originate our broadcast, as well as all throughout the state of Michigan, and find our full episodes, as well as each individual interview from every day leading all the way back to March of 2020 when we began this show on our website, civiccentertv.com/Megacast. Well, one of the great things about the state of Michigan, one of the great assets we have in the state of Michigan is our vast musical community. And in Warren, we have another addition to that that is just fantastic, and that is the Warren Symphony Orchestra. Joining us now is the music director and the conductor of the Warren Symphony Orchestra, Gina Provenzano, on today's edition of the Megacast. Gina, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
Appreciate having you on. And so a lot of interesting things happening with the Warren Symphony Orchestra, some exciting concerts coming up as well. But let's start off with you and get a little information on your background and what brought you to the Warren Symphony Orchestra.
Well, I'm originally from Michigan. I lived in Maine for about 15 years, most recently, but we moved back about 7 or 8 years ago. And so I decided to audition for the Warren Symphony, and I made it. My father's originally from the Detroit area, so it was nice to come home.
Yeah, it's a great place here in Michigan for music and for symphony orchestras as well. You think about the DSO, you think certainly about the Warren Symphony Orchestra, and many of our great orchestras that are from our universities and our colleges too, that are just prolific and competitive on a national and worldwide level. This is a great state for musicians in more traditional styles of music or classical styles of music. And the Warren Symphony Orchestra certainly is no exception to that. What drew you to Warren as in this particular orchestra for you to continue your music career and lead these great musicians right here in our local area?
Well, like I said, I'm from Michigan. I went to the University of Michigan, and as a female conductor, it's difficult to find positions like this, and Warren had an opening. And when I returned home, from Maine, I decided that I would really like to pursue the orchestra conducting world. And my uncle is from Warren, my parents are from the Detroit, or my father's from the Detroit area, so I thought it'd be a great start for me.
So season 48 of the Warren Symphony Orchestra completed over the summer, completed its a run in July. Season 49 just about underway. Got some more concerts that are coming up. In particular, as we celebrate our veterans over the next few weeks, you have your Made in America concert coming up on November 13th. Tell us about this performance and what are some of the tunes that people will be able to hear that will celebrate our country, and certainly those that have fought to allow us to enjoy this music in our local area.
Right. So the theme is Made in America. So we're doing all American composers. We have Gould with American Salute. We are playing the Armed Forces Salute. We're playing Aaron Copland, a Florence Price piece. It's going to be great music, and we're honoring our veterans by giving them complimentary tickets. So all they have to do is call the Macomb Center for the Arts or visit the Macomb Center for the Arts to get their complimentary ticket to thank them for their service. We're also going to be honoring Dave Daniels, who was the original conductor of the Warren Symphony, who passed away a couple of years ago, but with COVID, we never had the chance to honor him appropriately. And also Laura Sayas, who was a bass player in the orchestra and taught many bass players in the area. So we'll be honoring and remembering both of them as well. I also want to say that we also always have K through 12th grade free tickets for our orchestra concerts, and we're always promoting the youth. So we would love to have some youth at our concerts. We'll also be doing a live auction. We've never done this before, but we're going to, at that very moment, people can bid and have the chance to actually conduct the orchestra, the Washington Post March. So if anyone's interested in conducting a professional orchestra, they can come out and bid on that day.
More information can be found at motorcitysymphony.org. That is motorcitysymphony.org. .org. The Warren Symphony Orchestra have been in operations since 1973-74, where it held its first concerts, its first season after its finding in 1972, an institution here in the local area. And so, Gina, tell us about the musicians that make up this orchestra, because there is so much talent in music across various genres, certainly across different instruments and forms of musical practice in our state and certainly in southeastern Michigan. Tell us about those that make up the Warren Symphony Orchestra and how that ensemble really makes this particular group so special, especially here in season 49 of the WSO.
Yes, we have fabulous musicians. They play all over the place. They're from a lot of them are from the local Union 5, and we basically have very talented musicians from all the different schools in the area, and they play in several different orchestras, and they're just fabulous. And it's a great orchestra, and our prices of our tickets are not as high as other orchestras, so it's great for you to have the opportunity to see these talented people.
Again, more information can be found on motorcitysymphony.org. That is motorcitysymphony.org. Season 49 continues with their Made in America concert Sunday, November 13th. That is at 3 p.m. at the Macomb Center for the Performing Arts. $23 for adult tickets, $20 for senior tickets, $10 for college students. And hey, bring your kids along. K through 12 students get into this concert for free. Again, more information can be found on motorcitysymphony.org. And you mentioned that there's so many talented musicians that have joined in on this and have been in music and been inspired by music for their entire life. And what I love about the Warren Symphony Orchestra is not only does it do a great job of incorporating the community in its local area and even in the regional area in southeastern Michigan into its mission and certainly into its outreach, but it also does the work to inspire that next generation, where there's so much variation in popular music that it can often not get the classical approach and the ensemble approach, the big band approach kind of gets thrown to the wayside, and it's a lost art in some regards. But efforts like the youth art, youth concerts and youth library efforts from the Warren Symphony Orchestra do a great job of keeping that alive. So, Gina, what is the motivation behind these initiatives, and what sort of opportunities are there for kids to get involved with the WSO?
Well, we've been, when the orchestra was created, it was created because the orchestra program was taken out of the schools in Warren. And so we created it, or I didn't create it, but they created it in order to keep the youth informed and be able to learn about orchestras. We have youth concerts, which actually we have on Thursday. We'll be doing youth concerts where kids from all over the area can come in and hear a real live orchestra and see the different instruments and families. And it's a great opportunity for them to be able to see something they probably or may not see their entire life, so it's available to everyone. And that's why we also do the K through 12th grade free tickets, because we really, our youth is our future, and it's nice to have them be able to hear the classical music.
And it's interesting too, because not only are they able to experience that classical music, they're able to learn a little bit about the theory also, all those things that you would normally get in the classroom when you're learning music, and can really enrich somebody's educational foundation and certainly help them explore interests in the arts and even help them in sciences too, when they're learning about matching those sounds and repairing instruments and the mechanics of various instruments, whether they be woodwinds or brass instruments. Certainly string instruments have a big impact in that regard, and it all comes together in this symphony orchestra. And what's great too is that you also provide a number of resources online, but also in person at the Macomb Center for the Performing Arts for these kids in the community to learn about music from the grassroots and also engage with these musicians at the Warren Symphony Orchestra.
Yes. Yeah, so we also have school visits. If anyone's ever interested, they can contact us, and we try to create the possibility for myself or musicians to come into the school as well.
Again, more information, motorcitysymphony.org is their website. You can find more information, look up some of their past concerts, certainly how you can get your kids involved with the WSO and all of their efforts, and of course to help them out and donate to their efforts, not only for supporting their concerts and their continued advocacy for music and for the arts in the Warren community and in the greater community as well, but also to support all the programs that they do to support the local community beyond their concerts. Season 49, again, begins November 13th, 2022 at the Macomb Center for the Performing Arts, 3 p.m. Again, that's Sunday, November 13th at 3 p.m. Tickets can be purchased online, MotorCitySymphony.org, to scroll over to concerts, season 49 and November 13th, or click on the Made in America link on their homepage at MotorCitySymphony.org. In terms of people that are interested in music and getting more involved in the arts, particularly, and maybe they're interested in joining the Warren Symphony Orchestra, what sort of process do they need to go through if they'd like to join you and your team and be one of the great musicians there in Warren?
We'd love to have more board members and volunteers, and you can just contact us at our website, where you can email us at warrensymphonyorchestra@gmail.com. And I just want to mention one more thing. Please don't forget veterans. You're free to come to this concert. We'd love to thank you for your service.
Yeah, veterans and K through 12 students get in for free. $10 for college students, $20 for seniors, and $23 for general adult tickets. And again, they're Made in America concerts Sunday, November 13th of this year at the Macomb Center for the Performing Arts. Gina, before we let you go, anything else that you'd like to say today about the Warren Symphony Orchestra or any upcoming projects or initiatives from your organization?
Just that we have two other concerts as well on February 12th and April 23rd. February 12th will be Love is in the Air. It's around Valentine's Day, so we thought that would be fun. And then in April, the concert will be Out of This World, the famous piece everyone loves, Star Wars, and some other pieces to do with Out of This World.
You can learn more information and of course, get more info on their upcoming concerts. Put them in your calendar and purchase tickets at MotorCitySymphony.org. In addition, you can learn more about the Warren Symphony Society and all the great work that they do to advocate for the arts and music in Warren and in the greater area here in southeastern Michigan. Gina, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Appreciate having you on. Gina Provenzano, the music director and the conductor for the Warren Symphony Orchestra. One more time, their Made in America concert is coming up, kicking off season 49, November 13th, 2022 at the Macomb Center for the Performing Arts. More info, MotorCitySymphony.org. We'll take a break here on the Megacast. We'll shift gears from music to the markets, particularly the housing market, where things have been shifting back and forth over the last several years with the pandemic and with inflation. And now we're in a position where, is it a buyer's market or a seller's market? We'll be joined by an individual that is a local realtor and a broker next on the Megacast to discuss just that. Stay tuned. We'll be back after this short break.
Let's savor these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Let's relish these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the festivals going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I don't like getting sick. The virus will die. It will be easy to not catch it. Keep my family safe and keep playing soccer because I love being vaccinated.
What's your hope for everyone?
I hope everybody gets the vaccine to keep safe and strong. Be happy, having fun everywhere. Everyone stay safe and hope you get the vaccine.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live local daily TV, radio, and streaming show looking into all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more about our program by going on your computer and going to our website, civiccentertv.com/Megacast, where you'll find more information on all of our partnering stations across the Great Lakes State, including My Michigan TV, and find all of our full shows and individual interviews on demand. Well, certainly over the past several years, we've had multiple fluctuations in our housing markets for a variety of different reasons. Certainly the pandemic having a big impact. More recently, inflation having an impact as well. Right now, it looks like if you're looking to buy a home, you're in luck. If you're looking to sell a home, it's a lot more competitive than it's been over the past couple of years. That being said, there are plenty of strategies that you can employ both as a buyer and a seller of homes in order to make the market work for you. Joining us now to talk about just that is Frank Lucretio from Realty Executives Hometown on today's edition of the Megacast. Frank, thanks for being with us today.
Good morning, Tyler. How are you?
Good. How are you doing, Frank?
Good.
Appreciate
Definitely.
Go ahead. Appreciate having you on. So what are let's go through some of the factors that have changed in the last 6 months to a year or so that have kind of shifted this market from being where it was for the bulk of the pandemic and even a little bit before the pandemic being more of a seller's market to now being more advantageous for those that are actually looking to buy a home.
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of us have seen this coming for a little bit with inflation rising and the talk of interest rates going up. And now we're seeing the ramifications of those things. And it's created some opportunities for buyers. So some of these are challenging, but some of these are actually good things for buyers. Biggest thing right now is we're still seeing very low inventory. So low inventory is a challenge across the industry right now. But what we're seeing is buyers having more opportunity to negotiate. So as things keep going through the system of change, when we start seeing more inventory and buyers having the opportunity to negotiate, I think you'll start seeing the pricing get leveled off.
Yeah, and in terms of predicting that, so many people, I would imagine, in the housing market right now, whether they're on the side of a buyer and they're looking to purchase a home, or they're looking to sell their home, maybe downsize or capitalize on the equity they've made in their home over their time owning it. I would imagine that given where the market is at, given in the state of inflation in the U.S. and around the world at this time, many are looking to be a little bit more patient before they go into the market from one side or the other. What, in terms of the experts that are in the market, yourself and others and your colleagues in real estate, is there any sort of barometer, any sort of forecast right now for when that market improvement may happen, depending on what side you're on?
Yeah, depending on what side you're on, let's say you're a seller at this point. What has happened is we've hit the peak pricing. I think we're going to start seeing some of that pricing come down. The challenge becomes when you were selling at a peak price, you were also possibly purchasing at a peak price. So sellers still have good chance to get a very good value for their house, and then have the opportunity to turn around and still maybe get a better price on the house that they were going to purchase previously. So, again, it's the biggest challenge with sellers right now is there is none, right? We're still, very low inventory. We're starting to see the inventory sit a little longer. So sellers are going to have to start negotiating, but they don't have as much competition as even they had last year. So.
Now, obviously, you work in real estate. You're a broker and the owner of Realty Executives Hometown, and so you're on that seller's side. You're working with your clients to sell their homes. And so, what are you consulting your clients with at this time, or your properties with at this time, to make that sale a little bit more attractive to buyers, given that there is such low inventory on the market, as you mentioned?
Yeah, sellers have one chance to make a first impression. So to make sure the property is ready to present to the potential buyers, make sure that all your major mechanicals have been looked at or have been addressed. Make sure that all the little things like light plugs and fixtures and trim, and they're all cleaned up and painted. Make sure your landscaping is in good condition, and the house is ready to show. Because you never know when you have the right buyer come in the property. You don't want to make a bad first impression.
We're joined by Frank Lucretio. He is the broker and owner at Realty Executives Hometown, joining us on today's edition of the Megacast. In terms of resources, where do you suggest people go to learn more about what they can do from either angle of the market, whether they are looking to buy a home through a realtor like yourself, or are looking to sell their home with the help of a realtor? What are some of the tools that are available through your business to help them make better decisions in that regard and put themselves in the best position in this market?
Yeah, we have some great resources online, but I think the first step is to reach a professional, a local agent and broker, and let's consult. If you're on the buying side of the equation, let's see what your money really can buy right now. Let's set up reasonable expectations of a home or a style or type price range. Let's get you in contact with a professional mortgage lender, get your pre-approvals in order, get yourself lined up. Because if you are going to make that jump to start looking at properties or purchase property, you want to be able to do that as soon as you find the right property. You might not have a lot of time. As for sellers, we have some great resources on how to get your property ready to sell, taking the steps to walk through the house and making sure all the little things are tightened up. So we have some great resources on our website, realexecutives.com, that'll give you either side of the equation. And there's also a great calculator so a client can figure out possibly what they could afford in today's market.
And more information can be found on their website. We'll navigate over there in just a moment. The website, realtyexecutives.com. That is realtyexecutives.com for more information on Realty Executives from Frank Lucrecio and his team. Again, that's realtyexecutives.com for more info. And Frank, you're in the business of getting people in homes, but doing that in a way that is most advantageous to them. So for the buyers on that side of the market right now, you mentioned earlier on, there's given that there is such a low inventory, it is now more of a buyer's market. There is some leverage there to negotiate the prices of these homes, and or even at the very least, if you can't negotiate the price of the home, negotiate some of those closing costs and some additional things you can throw into that deal to put yourself in a better position when you do get into that home. What are you suggesting at this time to some of those that are looking to buy a home in terms of what they can leverage in some of these negotiations to really put themselves in a good position when they get into that home that they're looking at?
Yeah, obviously, prior it was very difficult to negotiate price or terms or repairs. Those are back on the table now. We're seeing the opportunity for buyers to negotiate seller concessions to help pay their closing costs and any mortgage expenses. We're seeing a lot of negotiating maybe after inspection to help with repairs. The other great thing we're seeing is lenders are now starting to get creative with financing programs that'll get a buyer into the property, maybe at a lower rate for the first few years to make up for some expenses. But yeah, definitely a great opportunity for a buyer to negotiate a better deal with better terms and get into the property that maybe they couldn't have done that, 6 months ago. Now is the time if maybe you didn't have the 20% down, you can get some seller concessions from the sellers. You can negotiate the repairs you couldn't handle yourself. So it's a great opportunity for buyers right now. But they have to be prepared.
More information can be found and get in contact with Frank and his team at Realty Executives at realtyexecutives.com. Realtyexecutives.com for more information on all this. And in terms of sellers, being that they're in a buyer's market, there is that low inventory, and you're going to be going into some tough negotiations. What's some advice you have for those that are selling their homes to put themselves in the best position to get that home off their hands, get a good deal, but also work with these buyers? Because just as quickly as you can get into those negotiations, the leverage is on the side of the buyers.
Yeah, the biggest challenge for a seller right now is setting the listing price, right? They really need to work with an expert to come up with the best possible listing price so you're not outpricing yourself out of the market or underpricing yourself. You have to expect you're going to do some negotiating. So you have to find that, semi-aggressive price where you attract enough people to the property, be able to do a little bit of negotiating, but you're still getting top dollar in this market. Now, this market is different than it was 3 months ago. So be prepared. Your listing price is not a price to get over anymore. That's happening very seldom now. It's more of a price to get to. So having a reasonable expectation, you'll be able to sell your property, and then you'll probably have a better opportunity to buy something at a lower price on the other side. So expectations is really the big thing they have to set.
We're joined by Frank Lucrecio, broker and owner at Realty Executives Hometown, on today's edition of the Megacast. More information on Frank and other Realty Executives locations across Michigan can be found at realtyexecutives.com, realtyexecutives.com for all that. And Frank, we talk about the impact of this market mostly being from inflation, and one of the results of inflation has been the rise in interest rates by the Federal Reserve and really across the board by banks. And so that affects certainly people's mortgages as they're buying these homes. What advice do you have for home buyers as they are getting into these new homes and getting into, in some cases, new mortgages, or even those just refinancing, to put their best foot forward in those situations so that when the market does adjust, and hopefully at some point here soon is a little bit more favorable in terms of interest rates, that they're not stuck with a much bigger bill than they need?
Yeah. First, for buyers, I think don't get super enticed by a rate you think is really good. You want to look at the overall picture of expenses for that rate, the closing costs associated with it. So try to look at APR, which is all the closing costs plus the rate over the term of the loan. So that's one key thing. The other great thing, like I mentioned before, is lenders are starting to get creative. We're seeing the adjustable rate mortgage back out. Adjustable rate mortgages will give you initial low rate for a period of time, and then they will adjust up or down depending on where the market's at that time. So those are great programs. If your income's going to increase in 5 or 6 years, or you think you're not going to be in the property more than a certain period of time, you can get a lower rate today. We're also seeing other programs like a 2-1 buy down, which is a really interesting program that we just ran across, where the seller can put money in an account for a potential buyer to pay the rate down for the next 2 years. So they get a really low introductory first year, which is probably less than 2% over the current rate. And then the second year it goes up 1%. And then the third year you're back to market. But there's an opportunity to have initial first few years at a really good price. And I think at the end of the day, it shouldn't matter about rate. It's about what you can afford monthly. So let's look at that monthly payment. So you definitely want to talk to an expert and make sure that you're comfortable with the monthly payment, because at the end of the day, the rate, 7-8% we might see at some point. Those will come down at some point in the future, but you don't want to miss the opportunity to buy because you're scared of the rate. Let's look at the payment associated with that.
RealtyExecutives.com is the website to get in contact with Frank Lucrecio and his team here locally, as well as other Realty Executives locations across Michigan and the U.S. Frank, another couple minutes with you before we'll say goodbye. Any other lasting advice you'd like to give to those on the housing market at this time from your perspective as a realtor, either those buying or those, of course, looking to sell their home in this competitive market?
Yeah, let's start with sellers. It's still a great time to sell. You still have good opportunity. There's not that many sellers out there, so you don't have as much competition. And traditionally, the market starts slowing up this time of year, so you have even less competition. And the buyers are out there, they're serious. So good time to keep your property for sale and get on the market. As far as buyers go, we're seeing, again, a lot of creative financing. Buyers that didn't have a lot of down payment now can get in the market with seller concessions. And I think for both parties, there's good reason to be in the housing market. And again, rate is possibly a short-term thing we're going to see go up and eventually hopefully come down a little bit. But I think the days of the 2 or 3% mortgage, those are over. But we had a great housing market before those days came. So just setting up realistic expectations, talking to a local professional will help you through those processes, and you'll be in a good position to buy or sell.
RealtyExecutives.com is where you can go to get in contact with Frank Lucrecio and his team locally, as well as others, other Realty Executives locations across Michigan. Frank, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tyler.
And a big thank you to Frank for being on our program this week and telling us more about all the things going on in the housing market, some of the factors leading into where it's at currently in more of a buyer's market, and some of those helpful strategies you might want to be employing if you're looking to buy a home, or of course, if you're looking to sell a home anytime soon. We'll take a break. On the other side, big debate last night between Governor Gretchen Whitmer and GOP challenger Tudor Dixon. Dave Dulio from Oakland University's Center for Civic Engagement will join us next. You're watching and listening to the Megacast.
This November, honor the many people who offer their lives for our freedom at the 2022 Heroes Appreciation Breakfast. Organizations, charities, and local residents are invited to celebrate the men and women that ensure our safety and security. Hear from guest speakers, live performances, and presentations from veterans, officers, and more. Save the date, November 8th, 9 to 10:30 a.m. at the new West Bloomfield Middle School. Call 248-451-1900 to
In the face of COVID-19, staying healthy is important. And now the same is true as we face the flu. Influenza has the potential to infect millions, putting lives and the healthcare system at risk. Fortunately, it's easy to protect yourself. The flu vaccine is safe and effective, and with COVID-19 still spreading, it's essential. To see how you can hit this virus head on, visit michigan.gov/flu.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live local daily TV, radio, and streaming show about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more about our program on civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll find more information on all of our partnering stations across the Great Lakes state, including My Michigan TV, and find all of our full shows and individual interviews on demand. civiccentertv.com/megacast is the website. Last night marked the final gubernatorial debate between Governor Gretchen Whitmer and GOP challenger Tudor Dixon. This time it had happened here locally in Oakland County at Oakland University. Joining us now is a professor of political science at Oakland University and the director of their Center for Civic Engagement, Dave Duliel, on today's Megacast. Dave, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Tyler. Nice to talk to you.
Yeah, good to talk to you as well. Big day yesterday at Oakland University, especially for the Center for Civic Engagement. It began on a little bit of a nicer side with Civility Day. Tell us about that, because that was a big event at Oakland University. A lot of excitement behind it. So how did everything go at Civility Day?
It was great. Thanks for asking. You know, we partnered with Nolan Finley and Stephen Henderson and their Civility Project, which has a number of the same goals and sort of principles that the Center for Civic Engagement does in trying to get Americans to be able to talk to each other again and do so without simply assuming that because somebody disagrees with you that they're evil. And yesterday was a great model of that. And of course, Nolan and Stephen do that incredibly well. And we welcomed a bunch of other speakers that drove that point home, including Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, Congressman Fred Upton. You know, big thanks to him for driving over from the southwest corner of the state just for the morning, and a bunch of other folks. And there were about 150 people that showed up. Right, I mean, it was really a good turnout, and that tells me that people are looking for this kind of thing, right? That there's a desire out there, that there's an appetite for it, and I think that's a good sign, right? If we got 5 people, I'd be worried, right? But you get that size crowd on a Tuesday morning, and I think it's a great signal.
Yeah, it's a great way to begin that final debate day, as people are going to be looking at both these candidates, certainly at the ways that they're kind of going in at each other, and really also how we're seeing in the last couple of weeks of the election, those attacks really go on the increase, and we see both candidates on either side of the aisle go on the offensive. So it's a great way to take that back a step and really consider yourself, where you're at, and what sort of political conversations you need to be having with those in your life, and what you can learn from those on the other side. So going into when the gloves did come off on Tuesday night at the gubernatorial debate, definitely different than it was a couple of weeks back at the first one in Grand Rapids. This time around, both these candidates really putting on the pedal to the metal, especially Governor Whitmer in some of her appointed jabs at Tudor Dixon, particularly referring to her at times as being bankrolled by Betsy DeVos, being ill-prepared to lead the state, and even going after her about things such as being an election denier, a COVID-19 anti-vax person as well, because of her affiliation with Donald Trump and with Trump Republicans. It was an interesting debate from both angles, because both the candidates really did go in on the other, but also did a pretty decent job of laying out where they stand on some of the critical issues affecting Michiganders.
Yeah, the contrasts between these two candidates really couldn't be more clear. It's the voters have a stark choice to make, right? I mean, it's laid out there right in front of them, and I think that's why debates like this one are so important. Is that it does give an unfiltered look at the candidates and their stances on issues, their plans for the future, et cetera, et cetera. I think you're right that Governor Whitmer came out more aggressive than the first time. Tudor Dixon, though, maintained her aggressive posture I think she performed very well. She is poised and prepared, and I think that really was on display last night.
Yeah, Aaron Call from the University of Michigan, their director of debate, was quoted in a Paul Egan article in the Detroit Free Press, referring to Whitmer's strategy from the first debate as being more of prevent defense. This time around, it was certainly more on the offensive side, making quite a few remarks on Tudor Dixon's campaign. But as you mentioned, Dixon came back on the defensive of her stances, and what was really impressive from her in particular was we sort of saw a change in her strategy as well, where on certain issues, particularly on the 1931 abortion law, whether or not she would sort of play along with Proposal 3, should that be voted affirmatively by the electorate here in the state of Michigan. She definitely went in and clarified where she stands a lot more clearly in this debate on many of those issues, as well as on issues related to COVID-19 as well. Do you believe that there was a strategy behind that this late in the game for Tudor Dixon to really make sure that the electorate knows where she stands on these critical issues, whereas before, maybe that strategy was to be a little bit more vague to prevent some of those attacks from the Whitmer campaign?
Well, if that was the strategy, it didn't work, right? I mean, because the attacks from the Whitmer campaign came, and they came fast and furious. I think it was part of the strategy for the Dixon campaign to try and get their candidate to make pretty clear statements about where she stands. And she did that from the top of the debate, and she said something to the effect of, I'd like to introduce myself. And she's doing that because she hasn't had a whole lot of money to air her own television commercials. There hasn't been a whole lot from the Dixon campaign or even its third party group allies, unlike the Whitmer campaign that has just been heavily funded and has been able to, as we've talked about before, really define Tudor Dixon to the electorate before Tudor Dixon could define herself. So last night in this debate, which I think we should also note was the only one that was aired here in Oakland County, right? If it was not aired on television the first time, if folks wanted to see it, they had to go and find a stream. So there's a lot of people that just didn't do that. So this is the first time many voters in Southeast Michigan where roughly 50% of the vote is going to come from in this election that they've had a chance to hear directly from Tudor Dixon rather than hear about her from Gretchen Whitmer and her allies, right? So she needed this opportunity. She took the opportunity to lay out her stances on all sorts of issues, whether it's abortion, COVID policies, taxes, education, et cetera, right? We just went down the litany of issues last night. And I think that's beneficial to Tudor Dixon, especially given the inability of her to communicate directly with folks because of this lack of funding.
And it was interesting, too, because so much of the last several weeks and really so much of this gubernatorial race since the primaries has been circulating on the abortion issue in particular in the state of Michigan on what happens with Proposal 3, what happens with the old 1931 abortion law following the repeal of Roe versus Wade. And what's kind of gone to the wayside was what we had thought in the past year and really in the past 18 months was going to be that critical issue or the critical point of debate in this campaign, which was the response to COVID-19 pandemic and how Governor Gretchen Whitmer's policies may affect her in this upcoming election and how the GOP candidate, whoever that may have been at that time, would use that against Governor Whitmer and potentially have that be a winning strategy. We saw some of that creep back last night as Governor Whitmer and Tudor Dixon got into a debate about what sort of strategy would have worked better and sort of Monday morning quarterbacking the pandemic response from Governor Whitmer, with Whitmer making a really interesting comment that got some backlash almost immediately, where she referred to children only being out of school for 3 months over the course of the pandemic. Certainly not the case, albeit it was technically that under her specific orders, but that definitely a sticking point and quite the gaffe from the governor, and Tudor Dixon capitalized on that.
Yeah, I think so. And you saw the immediate, and you mentioned this, right? The immediate reaction from the Twitter world, from the Dixon sort of ally camp, right?
Yeah.
And I think you hit on a couple of important points there. One, I mean, the statement that kids were out of school for only 3 months. A lot of parents are going to hear that and go, what are you talking about? Right now, follow that up with your point about the fact that it under the governor's order, it only was 3 months. But by the time you explain that to a voter, it takes a while. And one, they've lost you. Two, they don't care who made the order, right? For most of the time, it was those local school boards. And this is not to say that whether those decisions were right or wrong, but parents remember that. And they are going to go back and say, wait a minute, my kid was out of school for a year or more. What is she talking about? So I think you're right that was a mistake by the governor. But I think we're also going to start to see it in advertisements. I would be shocked if by the end of the week, or even by the end of the day, if some parts of the state didn't have ads on the air with that clip of the governor and then a clear response from the Dixon folks.
Yeah, especially with one of the common jabs from Tudor Dixon from her campaign being their claims of Governor Whitmer being that consummate career politician. That's a career politician sort of line, and definitely one that they'll want to be capitalizing on as we are now less than 2 weeks away from Election Day proper. Lastly, on the debate side of things, Tudor Dixon clarifying her stance on Proposal 3 and stating that she would accept the results of Proposal 3 should it be passed by the electorate in the state of Michigan, which was for a while up for questions, certainly because of her stance on abortion and direct quotes from Dixon and her campaign on her stance on abortion. Do you believe that her statement that she would support and in that case enforce that law should it be passed by the people of the state of Michigan? Do you believe that is going to be helpful for her, particularly with moderates as we approach Election Day?
It can't hurt, right? I think she I take her at her word, let's put it that way, right? And I think that there will be some who will doubt her, but if you're not going to believe her, you're not voting for her anyway. Right. That I think that you've got your mind made up. I don't think that's a major. I don't think that'll be a major factor.
More information can be found on upcoming events at the Oakland University Center for Civic Engagement during the election season and even beyond as issues continue to pop up at oakland.edu/CCE. We're joined by Dave Dulio, professor of political science at Oakland University, as well as the director for the Center for Civic Engagement. Again, oakland.edu for more information. Dave, as we approach Election Day, any other activities coming up from the Center for Civic Engagement, other things we should be keeping an eye out for from your organization?
Yeah, we're going to do 2 more of our office hours series where we give folks a chance to either come by the Oakland Center or watch via Zoom and ask questions. There are going to be 2 election-related sessions, one on November 3rd at noon, so before the election, and then one the night after the election on November 9th, where we're going to welcome 2 special guests. I'll leave that vague for now, but folks can always find more information on that at oakland.edu/CCE. You can get all the information on how to sign up for those.
You said it, oakland.edu/CCE for more information and videos from past activities at the Oakland University Center for Civic Engagement. Dave, I always appreciate having you on.
Thanks, Tyler.
Talk soon. Dave Dulio from Oakland University on today's edition of the Megacast, and a big day yesterday for them at Oakland University, Civility Day, and then, of course, hosting the final gubernatorial debate between Governor Gretchen Whitmer and the Republican challenger, Tudor Dixon. That is going to do it for this Wednesday edition of the MegaCast. Big thank you to all of our guests for joining us on today's edition of the program, as well as our dedicated crew at the studio of My Michigan TV. As always, you can keep up to date with us and view our full shows and each individual interview on demand at civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll also learn more information about all of our partnering stations in your local area and all across the great state of Michigan and all their other original programming as well. That's it for today's show. We'll return soon with a new episode.
This is My Michigan TV. Around here, we